Maya Carter's story was one that seemed almost too extraordinary to be true. Born and raised in a small working-class neighborhood, she grew up watching her parents juggle multiple jobs just to make ends meet. Her father worked long hours as a mechanic, while her mother cleaned offices at night. Despite their struggles, they always emphasized the importance of education and hard work. From a young age, Maya understood that if she wanted to change her circumstances, she would have to carve her own path. As a child, Maya had an insatiable curiosity. She loved taking things apart: old radios, broken clocks, anything she could get her hands on, to figure out how they worked. By the time she was in high school, she had taught herself basic coding using free resources from the library. It wasn't easy. There were days when frustration got the better of her, but she refused to give up. Her teachers noticed her potential and encouraged her to apply for scholarships to prestigious universities. Against all odds, Maya earned a full ride to one of the top engineering schools in the country. College was both exciting and challenging. For the first time, Maya found herself surrounded by peers who came from backgrounds vastly different from hers. Many of them had grown up with access to technology, private tutors, and endless opportunities. At times, she felt out of place, like she didn't belong. But instead of letting self-doubt consume her, Maya channeled it into determination. She spent countless late nights in the computer lab, perfecting her skills and building projects that caught the attention of professors and industry leaders alike. After graduation, Maya entered the tech world, eager to make her mark. However, she quickly realized that being a black woman in a predominantly white, male-dominated field came with its own set of challenges. Colleagues often underestimated her abilities, assuming she had landed her position through affirmative action rather than merit. During meetings, her ideas were sometimes ignored until a male coworker repeated them. These experiences stung, but Maya used them as fuel to prove herself even further. Her big break came when she identified a gap in the market: a need for faster, more secure payment systems tailored to small businesses. With little more than a prototype and unwavering belief in her vision, Maya pitched her idea to investors. Though many turned her down, claiming her concept was too niche or risky, she eventually secured funding from a venture capitalist who saw her potential. Within 2 years, her company became a game changer in the financial technology sector, earning millions in revenue and disrupting traditional banking models. Despite her success, Maya remained grounded. She often visited her old neighborhood, mentoring young students and encouraging them to dream big. She believed deeply in giving back to the community that had shaped her. Yet, no matter how far she climbed, Maya couldn't escape the subtle, and sometimes not so subtle, reminders that society still viewed her differently because of her race and gender. Little did she know, an encounter at her local bank would force her to confront these biases head-on and remind the world of the power of standing up for oneself. It was a crisp Tuesday afternoon when Maya decided to visit her local bank branch. The day had been hectic, filled with back-to-back meetings and phone calls about an upcoming business deal. She needed to withdraw some funds to finalize the transaction, and though she could have easily handled it online, she preferred the personal touch of face-to-face banking for larger amounts. Dressed casually in dark jeans, a fitted blazer, and low heels, Maya walked into the bank feeling confident and composed. What she didn't expect was that this routine errand would turn into anything but ordinary. The bank was bustling with activity, as usual. Customers lined up at the teller windows, while others sat in chairs filling out paperwork. Maya joined the queue, scrolling through emails on her phone as she waited. When it was finally her turn, she stepped up to the counter and greeted the teller with a polite smile. "Hi, I'd like to make a withdrawal," she said, sliding her debit card and driver's license across the counter. The teller, a young woman with a nervous demeanor, glanced at the ID and then back at Maya. Something in her expression shifted ever so slightly, though Maya couldn't quite place what it meant. "Are you sure this is your account?" the teller asked after a pause, her tone hesitant. Maya raised an eyebrow, surprised by the question. "Yes, it's definitely mine," she replied calmly, pointing to the name on the ID. "You can see it matches." The teller nodded but seemed unconvinced. Instead of processing the request, she began asking more questions, questions that felt unnecessary and intrusive. "Do you have another form of identification? Maybe a passport or a utility bill?" Maya frowned, sensing something was off. She pulled out her company ID badge, which clearly displayed her name, photo, and title as CEO. Surely this would settle the matter. But instead of easing the tension, the additional proof only seemed to make the teller more flustered. After another uncomfortable moment, the teller muttered something about needing approval from the manager and disappeared into the back office. Maya stood there, gripping the edge of the counter, trying to keep her frustration in check. This wasn't just inconvenient, it felt wrong. As the minutes dragged on, other customers started noticing the delay. Some glanced curiously at Maya, wondering why she was still standing there. Others whispered among themselves, speculating about what might be going on. A man behind her in line leaned forward and asked if everything was okay. "I think so," Maya replied tersely, forcing a tight smile. Inside, however, her patience was wearing thin. She had been a loyal customer of this bank for years, depositing large sums regularly and never encountering issues like this before. Why now? And why here? When the branch manager finally appeared, he introduced himself as Mr. Harris and ushered Maya aside to a quieter corner of the lobby. His demeanor was polite but distant, almost clinical. He began scrutinizing her account details on his tablet, tapping and swiping with exaggerated focus. Every second felt heavier than the last. Maya crossed her arms, her jaw tightening as she watched him act, as though she were some sort of imposter trying to access someone else's money. It was becoming clear that this wasn't just a simple misunderstanding. It was something deeper, something rooted in bias. And Maya knew exactly how this story usually ended, with people like her having to fight twice as hard to prove they belonged. Mr. Harris, the branch manager, was a tall man in his late 40s with neatly combed hair and an air of authority that bordered on arrogance. As he stood beside Maya, scrolling through her account details on his tablet, his expression remained unreadable. But his actions spoke volumes. Instead of processing her withdrawal request promptly, he began peppering her with questions that felt less like standard protocol and more like thinly veiled attempts to catch her in some sort of lie. "Can you confirm your last 3 transactions?" he asked, his tone clipped and formal. Maya blinked, taken aback by the absurdity of the question. "I'm not sure why that's relevant," she replied evenly, trying to maintain her composure. "My ID matches the account holder's name, and I've provided multiple forms of identification. Is there a specific issue with my request?" Mr. Harris hesitated, clearly uncomfortable under her steady gaze. He glanced at the tablet again, tapping unnecessarily before responding. "Well, ma'am, we just need to ensure everything is in order. These are precautionary measures." The word precautionary hung in the air like a challenge. To anyone listening, it might have sounded reasonable enough. But Maya knew better. Precaution wasn't what this was about. This was about doubt, skepticism, and perhaps something uglier lurking beneath the surface. The longer the conversation went on, the more apparent it became that Mr. Harris wasn't going to budge easily. He kept circling back to vague concerns about account activity or security protocols, never offering concrete reasons for the delay. Each time Maya answered one of his questions, he found another excuse to prolong the process. It was as if he were intentionally creating obstacles, hoping she'd grow tired and leave. But Maya wasn't about to back down. Not now, not ever. As the standoff continued, whispers rippled through the lobby. Other customers couldn't help but notice the tension between Maya and the manager. Some watched sympathetically, sensing that something unfair was unfolding. Others seemed skeptical, perhaps wondering if there was any truth to Mr. Harris's insinuations. A middle-aged woman sitting nearby leaned over to her companion and muttered, "Why is he making such a big deal out of this? She looks perfectly fine to me." Maya heard the comment but didn't react. Instead, she focused all her attention on Mr. Harris, determined to see this through. Her mind raced as she pieced together what was happening. This wasn't about security or procedure. It was about bias. Despite her polished appearance, her credentials, and her status as a high-value customer, she was being treated as though she didn't belong here. As though someone like her couldn't possibly own an account worth this much money. The realization stung, but it also fueled her resolve. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Mr. Harris sighed heavily and said, "All right, Ms. Carter, we'll authorize the withdrawal. But let me remind you, it's important to always double-check your finances to avoid misunderstandings like this in the future." His words landed like a slap, condescending and dismissive. Maya stared at him, her heart pounding. Did he really think she needed a lecture on managing her own money? For a brief moment, she considered letting it go. After all, the transaction was finally moving forward, and she could walk away without further confrontation. But deep down, she knew that staying silent would only validate his behavior and send the message that it was acceptable to treat people this way. No, she thought firmly. This ends now. With quiet determination, Maya nodded curtly, collected her cash, and turned toward the exit. But as she stepped outside, her mind was already racing with what came next. As Maya stepped out of the bank, her hands gripping the envelope containing her cash, she felt a storm brewing inside her. The crisp air outside did little to cool the heat rising in her chest. She paused for a moment on the sidewalk, taking a deep breath as the weight of what had just happened settled over her. This wasn't just about a delayed withdrawal or an inconvenient trip to the bank. It was about something far bigger, something that cut deeper than any single interaction. The manager's final comment echoed in her mind. It's important to always double-check your finances to avoid misunderstandings like this in the future. Those words weren't meant to be helpful. They were meant to undermine her. They carried a subtle accusation, as if she didn't know how to manage her own money. It was insulting, especially coming from someone who clearly had no idea who she was or what she had accomplished. Maya clenched her fists tightly around the envelope, her nails pressing into her palms. For years, she had faced similar moments of condescension and doubt. But today, she decided, would be different. Maya turned abruptly and marched back into the bank, her heels clicking sharply against the tiled floor. Heads turned as she strode past the teller counters, drawing stares from customers and employees alike. Some looked confused. Others seemed uneasy, sensing that something dramatic was about to unfold. Without hesitation, Maya headed straight for Mr. Harris's office, where he sat behind his desk reviewing paperwork. He looked up, startled, as she entered without knocking. "Ms. Carter," he said, his voice tinged with surprise and a hint of nervousness. "Is there something else I can help you with?" Maya placed both hands firmly on his desk and leaned forward, her piercing gaze locking onto his. "Yes," she said, her tone calm, laced with steel. "There's something you need to understand." Before he could respond, she pulled out her phone and dialed her personal assistant. Within seconds, the call connected, and Maya spoke firmly into the receiver. "Can you confirm our company's current stake in First National Bank? Specifically, the percentage we own?" There was a brief pause on the other end before her assistant replied. "Yes, Ms. Carter. We hold a 62% majority stake in the bank chain." Maya lowered the phone slightly and held Mr. Harris's widening eyes with her own. "Did you hear that?" she asked, her voice steady but cutting. "My company owns this bank, and you, Mr. Harris, are fired, effective immediately." For a moment, the room seemed to freeze. Mr. Harris's face drained of color as the gravity of the situation hit him. His mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water, searching for words that wouldn't come. Finally, he stammered, "Ms. Carter, please, I assure you, this is all a misunderstanding. I was just following protocol." Maya shook her head, her expression unyielding. "No, Mr. Harris, What you were doing wasn't protocol. It was prejudice. You treated me not as a valued customer, but as someone unworthy of respect because of how I look. That kind of behavior has no place in leadership or in my bank." Her words hung heavy in the air, leaving no room for argument. Around them, murmurs spread through the lobby as employees and customers realized what was happening. Some looked shocked, while others nodded approvingly, silently cheering Maya on. Mr. Harris slumped back in his chair, defeated as the reality of his actions and their consequences sank in. Maya straightened up, her posture commanding yet composed. She glanced at the clock on the wall, noting the time. "Corporate headquarters will send representatives within the hour to oversee the transition," she said matter-of-factly. Then, turning toward the doorway, she added one last thing. "Leadership isn't just about managing people, Mr. Harris. It's about treating everyone with fairness, dignity, and respect, something you clearly failed to do today." With that, Maya walked out of the office, leaving stunned silence in her wake. As she exited the bank once again, she felt a sense of clarity wash over her. This wasn't just about firing a manager. It was about sending a message. Change wouldn't happen overnight, but every action mattered. And today, she had taken a stand, not just for herself, but for everyone who had ever been underestimated or dismissed because of their race or gender. Word of Maya's bold move spread like wildfire. Within minutes of her departure, the bank's employees were abuzz with hushed conversations. Some gathered near the water cooler, whispering about what had just unfolded in Mr. Harris's office. Others frantically texted friends or family, sharing snippets of the dramatic scene they'd witnessed. By the time Maya reached her car, someone had already posted a video online, captured discreetly by a customer who happened to be recording the confrontation on their phone. The clip quickly gained traction, sparking reactions across social media platforms. Back inside the bank, chaos erupted as corporate headquarters received an urgent notification about the incident. Representatives from the main office arrived within the hour, armed with documents and instructions to begin the transition process. Employees watched nervously as boxes were brought into Mr. Harris's office to pack up his belongings. His termination was handled swiftly and decisively, leaving no room for debate. While some staff members felt sympathy for him, many couldn't deny that his actions had crossed a line. The atmosphere in the branch shifted dramatically, replaced by an uneasy tension, mixed with quiet admiration for the woman who had stood up to power. Meanwhile, outside the bank, hashtags began trending online. #RespectBlackWoman dominated Twitter feeds, accompanied by stories of similar experiences shared by Black women who had faced discrimination at financial institutions. Instagram posts featured screenshots of Maya's story, praising her poise and courage. Even LinkedIn lit up with discussions about accountability and leadership, with professionals weighing in on the importance of treating all customers and employees with fairness and dignity. For many, Maya's actions served as a wake-up call, reminding everyone that bias still thrived in spaces where it should have no place. The following morning, news outlets picked up the story, amplifying its reach even further. Local reporters interviewed customers who had been present during the incident, capturing first-hand accounts of how Maya handled herself with grace under pressure. One elderly woman, a regular at the branch, told a journalist, "She didn't yell or scream. She simply stated the facts and took control. That's what real leadership looks like." Another customer described feeling inspired by Maya's composure, saying, "It gave me hope that we can stand up against injustice without losing ourselves in the process." As the days passed, Maya became a household name, not just locally but nationally. Invitations poured in for interviews, panel discussions, and speaking engagements. People wanted to hear directly from her, eager to learn more about the woman behind the viral moment. Rather than shying away from the attention, Maya embraced it as an opportunity to drive change. She accepted select invitations, using each platform to highlight systemic issues within the banking industry and advocate for greater diversity and inclusion. Corporate leaders at First National Bank scrambled to respond to the backlash. In a public statement, they apologized for the incident and vowed to implement sweeping reforms, including mandatory diversity training for all employees and stricter oversight of managerial conduct. They also announced plans to create a task force aimed at addressing racial bias in customer service, a move widely seen as a direct result of Maya's intervention. Critics argued that these steps were long overdue, while supporters praised the company for taking responsibility. Through it all, Maya remained steadfast in her mission. She understood that firing one manager wouldn't solve the larger problem, but it was a start. Every headline, every hashtag, and every conversation sparked by her actions brought society one step closer to recognizing the need for systemic change. And though she knew the road ahead would be challenging, Maya felt a renewed sense of purpose. This wasn't just her victory. It was a victory for anyone who had ever been told they didn't belong. In the weeks following the incident, Maya found herself at the center of a national conversation about race, bias, and accountability. The viral moment had transformed her into more than just a successful CEO. It made her a symbol of resilience and justice. Yet, despite the whirlwind of attention, Maya refused to let the spotlight overshadow her mission. She understood that true change wouldn't come from hashtags or headlines alone. It required action, commitment, and collaboration. Maya wasted no time in leveraging her influence to push for meaningful reform within the banking industry. She partnered with advocacy groups like the National Diversity Coalition and Women in Finance to launch initiatives aimed at addressing systemic discrimination. Together, they developed workshops and training programs designed to educate bank employees on implicit bias, cultural sensitivity, and equitable customer service. These efforts weren't just about punishing bad behavior. They were about fostering understanding and creating environments where everyone felt valued and respected. One of the most impactful projects Maya spearheaded was a mentorship program for young Black professionals entering the financial sector. Growing up, she had often felt isolated in her pursuit of success, and she wanted to ensure that future generations wouldn't have to face the same barriers. Through this initiative, aspiring bankers, analysts, and entrepreneurs received guidance, networking opportunities, and access to resources that could help them navigate an industry still grappling with diversity issues. Many participants credited Maya with giving them the confidence to pursue their dreams, calling her a role model who proved that success was possible, even when the odds seemed stacked against you. Meanwhile, First National Bank worked tirelessly to rebuild its reputation. Under pressure from both corporate leadership and public scrutiny, the institution implemented sweeping changes. In addition to mandatory diversity training, they introduced anonymous feedback systems that allowed customers to report discriminatory behavior without fear of retaliation. They also established a new advisory board comprising community leaders, activists, and experts in racial equity to oversee progress and hold the bank accountable. While some critics dismissed these measures as performative, others acknowledged them as important first steps toward lasting transformation. As the months went by, Maya continued to use her platform to amplify marginalized voices. She appeared on talk shows, wrote op-eds, and spoke at conferences, sharing not only her own story, but also those of countless others who had faced similar injustices. Her message was clear. Discrimination wasn't just a personal affront. It was a structural problem that demanded collective effort to dismantle. By shining a light on these experiences, she hoped to inspire empathy and action among listeners, encouraging them to challenge biases wherever they encountered them. Despite the progress being made, Maya remained acutely aware of how much work still lay ahead. Conversations about race and inequality often sparked resistance, with some dismissing calls for change as unnecessary or exaggerated. But Maya didn't let pushback deter her. If anything, it fueled her determination to keep fighting. She knew that dismantling deeply ingrained systems of oppression would take time, patience, and persistence, and she was willing to dedicate herself fully to the cause. Through it all, Maya never lost sight of why she had taken a stand in the first place. It wasn't about revenge or retribution. It was about creating a world where no one else would have to endure what she had experienced that day at the bank. As she looked back on everything that had transpired, the confrontation, the fallout, the movement it ignited, she felt a profound sense of gratitude. Gratitude for the support she'd received, for the courage she'd mustered, and for the opportunity to turn a painful moment into a catalyst for change. The ripple effects of Maya's actions continued to spread far beyond the walls of that single bank branch. What had started as a personal encounter with discrimination blossomed into a broader movement, sparking conversations about fairness, respect, and accountability in industries across the country. People began to see Maya not just as a business leader, but as a trailblazer who dared to challenge the status quo, even when it meant taking on powerful institutions. One of the most significant outcomes of the incident was the way it reshaped First National Bank's approach to leadership and customer service. The reforms implemented under corporate pressure were more than just policy changes. They signaled a shift in culture. Employees at all levels underwent mandatory training sessions that went beyond surface-level discussions of diversity. These workshops encouraged honest dialogue about unconscious bias and provided tools for recognizing and addressing discriminatory behavior. For many staff members, it was an eye-opening experience, one that forced them to confront uncomfortable truths about their own assumptions and prejudices. Maya played an active role in shaping these initiatives, often meeting with top executives to ensure the changes were meaningful rather than performative. She pushed for transparency, urging the bank to publish annual reports detailing progress on diversity metrics and customer satisfaction rates. When asked why she invested so much time in reforming the very institution that had wronged her, Maya responded with characteristic wisdom. Change doesn't happen by walking away. It happens by staying and demanding better. If we want a fairer system, we have to build it together. Beyond the banking world, Maya's story inspired individuals and organizations to take a closer look at their own practices. Schools, hospitals, and even tech companies reached out to her, seeking advice on how to create more inclusive environments. Her message resonated deeply because it wasn't rooted in anger or bitterness. It was grounded in hope and action. She reminded audiences that while systemic change might feel overwhelming, every small step mattered. Whether it was calling out biased language in a meeting or advocating for equitable hiring policies, everyone had the power to make a difference. Her influence extended to younger generations as well. Maya became a beloved figure among students, particularly young women of color who saw her as proof that success was attainable despite societal barriers. She visited schools and community centers, sharing her journey and encouraging kids to dream big. During one such visit, a high school senior approached her after a talk and said, "I've always wanted to start my own business, but I didn't think people like me could really do that. Seeing you makes me believe I can." Moments like this reaffirmed Maya's belief that representation mattered, not just for visibility, but for empowerment. Of course, the path forward wasn't without challenges. Critics argued that Maya's efforts wouldn't be enough to dismantle centuries-old systems of inequality. Some accused her of being too idealistic, claiming that real change required radical upheaval rather than incremental improvements. But Maya remained undeterred. She acknowledged the enormity of the task ahead, but insisted that progress, no matter how slow, was still progress. "We won't fix everything overnight," she told a reporter during an interview. "But if we keep pushing, keep speaking up, and keep holding people accountable, we'll get there." By the end of the year, Maya's impact was undeniable. The bank where she had once been denied service stood as a model for other financial institutions striving to improve their practices. Communities rallied around her message of resilience and justice, using her story as a blueprint for challenging inequity in their own lives. And though Maya knew the fight was far from over, she felt a deep sense of fulfillment knowing she had sparked something bigger than herself. A movement fueled by courage, compassion, and collective action. Months after the incident at the bank, Maya stood on stage at a packed auditorium, addressing an audience of thousands at the annual Women's Empowerment Summit. The room buzzed with energy as attendees leaned forward in their seats, eager to hear from the woman who had become a beacon of hope and resilience. Clad in a sleek navy blue suit, Maya exuded confidence and grace as she began her keynote speech, not with a dramatic declaration, but with a simple, heartfelt thank you. "I want to start by thanking all of you," she said, her voice warm yet powerful. "Because none of what has happened over the past year would have been possible without your support, your stories, and your courage to stand up when it mattered most." Her words drew applause, but Maya quickly shifted gears, diving into the heart of her message: the importance of perseverance, self-belief, and collective action. She recounted the events of that fateful day at the bank, not to relive the frustration or anger, but to highlight the lessons she had learned. "That moment taught me something profound," she explained. "It reminded me that no matter how successful we become, there will always be forces, both subtle and overt, that try to make us question our worth. But here's the thing, they can only succeed if we let them." Maya went on to share how the experience had transformed her perspective. Before that day, she admitted, she often tried to downplay instances of bias, chalking them up to isolated incidents or misunderstandings. But standing face to face with Mr. Harris, she realized that staying silent wasn't just harmful to her. It perpetuated a cycle of injustice for others. "I decided then and there that I wouldn't just walk away," she said, "not because I wanted revenge, but because I wanted to show people like me, young Black women, aspiring entrepreneurs, anyone who's ever felt underestimated, that they deserve to take up space. They deserve respect." As she spoke, Maya emphasized that true empowerment came not from individual victories, but from lifting others along the way. She shared stories of young professionals she had mentored, customers whose lives had been touched by the changes at First National Bank, and communities galvanized by her advocacy work. Each story was a testament to the power of leading with purpose and compassion. "Success isn't just about climbing to the top," she declared. "It's about reaching back and pulling others up with you." Her speech ended with a call to action, one that resonated deeply with everyone present. "We live in a world that often tries to tell us we don't belong," she said, her voice rising with conviction. "But I'm here to remind you that you do. Your voice matters. Your dreams matter. And your fight for justice matters. So keep pushing, keep speaking out, and never underestimate the ripple effect of standing up for yourself. For it might just inspire someone else to do the same." The crowd erupted into applause, many rising to their feet in admiration. As Maya stepped off the stage, she felt a profound sense of fulfillment. This journey hadn't been easy, but it had been worth every challenge. Through her actions, she had ignited a movement that transcended industries and inspired countless individuals to demand better, for themselves and for others. In the months and years that followed, Maya continued to lead with humility and determination. Though she knew society still had a long way to go, she took solace in knowing that change was happening. One conversation, one policy, and one empowered individual at a time. For Maya Carter, this wasn't the end of her story. It was merely the beginning of a legacy built on resilience, justice, and unwavering belief in the power of possibility.